For years, I struggled with my English. I could read and write decently, but when it came to speaking, I always found myself translating from my native language, and it was slowing me down. Conversations were riddled with unnatural pauses, and the constant mental juggling increased my stress. I often panicked when I couldn't find the right words quickly enough, which only made my anxiety worse. One day, I realized that until I could think in English, I would never truly become fluent. This epiphany marked the beginning of my dedicated journey towards mastering English. Determined to improve, I began researching techniques to train my brain to think in English. One of the core principles I discovered was immersion. It was crucial to surround myself with English as much as possible. The idea was to create an environment where English was the default language. I started with something simple, switching to English-speaking news. Every morning, instead of tuning in to my usual station, I listened to an English news podcast. At first, it was overwhelming, but gradually, the words started to make sense. I also learned the lyrics to a few English songs and sang along whenever I could. Watching English movies and TV shows became a part of my routine. Through these activities, I was constantly hearing words and useful grammatical structures in context, which helped me understand their use in real-life situations. I dedicated about 30 minutes each day to immersing myself in English. This was like working out at the gym. Regular practice builds lasting strength, while infrequent efforts lead to regression. I made it a daily habit, just like brushing my teeth or having breakfast. I found that consistent exposure, even in small doses, made a significant difference. Over time, I began to notice subtle changes in my comprehension and vocabulary. The words and phrases I encountered repeatedly started to stick, and I felt more comfortable using them in conversations. One effective exercise involved using a podcast like 6-Minute English. Before pressing play, I spent a minute brainstorming words and ideas I already knew about the podcast topic. The trick was to avoid translating. If I caught myself trying to translate a word from my native language, I would stop and move on, focusing only on the English words that came to mind. This exercise forced me to rely on my existing knowledge of English and gradually expanded my mental vocabulary. As I listened to the episode with full focus, I absorbed the content more deeply. Afterward, I used an ideas map to quickly record the main ideas in English. This exercise helped create connections between the language I heard and the English words I needed. To reinforce this, I discussed the podcast episode with a speaking partner. The more I practiced, the easier it became to think in English. Another exercise involved using YouTube videos. I chose a video about a topic I was interested in, like fast fashion. I watched the first minute of the video without sound, focusing on the visual imagery. I wrote down or said out loud the words that came to mind in English. If I couldn't think of a word, I looked it up in English afterward. Avoiding direct translation was key. This method helped me think directly in English, making the language feel more natural. I watched the video again with sound and repeated the exercise. This second viewing helped reinforce the words and phrases I hadn't known initially, strengthening those neurological pathways. Engaging in English conversations was crucial. Although it was nerve-wracking at first, I practiced speaking as much as possible. Real conversations forced me to think quickly and respond in English, making it easier over time. I joined local language exchange groups and participated in online forums where English was the primary language. These interactions exposed me to different accents and slang, enhancing my listening skills and broadening my understanding of the language. Additionally, I sought out opportunities to speak with native English speakers, which boosted my confidence and helped me pick up nuances that I might have missed otherwise. I also set aside 5 minutes each day to describe my surroundings in English. Whether I was walking, on the bus, or in my office, I narrated what I saw and did. Starting with words, I gradually built up to simple sentences and increased the complexity. This exercise was mentally exhausting, but the short, consistent practice was effective. Describing everyday scenes in English helped me build a habit of thinking in the language. I even started to incorporate different tenses, describing past events and future plans, which added variety and depth to my practice. Consistency was key. I made it a daily habit to engage in English, completing one of these exercises each day. I used a podcast series and an audiobook to maintain a consistent source of materials, always returning to the same place for my daily practice. This regular engagement not only improved my language skills, but also kept me motivated. I tracked my progress by keeping a journal of new words and phrases, and I reviewed them regularly. Over time, this practice became a rewarding part of my routine, and I could see tangible improvements in my fluency and confidence. Gradually, I noticed a change. Thinking in English started to become second nature. My conversations flowed more smoothly, my pauses became less frequent, and my confidence grew. I was able to engage in spontaneous discussions without feeling anxious or overwhelmed. It was a journey, but with dedication and the right techniques, I was finally able to break free from the constraints of translation and embrace true fluency in English. This transformation opened up new opportunities for me, both personally and professionally, and enriched my interactions with people from different cultures. As time passed, I began to see the world differently. When I walked through the park, I didn't think, "There's a dog," in my native language. Instead, I thought, "What a beautiful golden retriever playing fetch." This shift was profound and empowering. I felt more connected to the language and the culture it represented. My ability to think in English not only improved my communication skills, but also gave me a deeper appreciation for the nuances of the language. I found myself enjoying English literature, music, and films more, as I could fully grasp the subtleties and cultural references. As I became more comfortable with these exercises, I introduced more advanced techniques, like shadowing. Shadowing involved listening to a short segment of English audio and then repeating it as closely as possible. This helped me mimic natural speech patterns and intonations, further embedding the language into my thinking process. I chose challenging materials, such as TED Talks and interviews with native speakers, to push myself. This practice improved my pronunciation and rhythm, making my speech sound more natural. Another advanced exercise was storytelling. I took simple daily events and narrated them in English. I started by describing my morning routine. I wake up at 6 a.m. I brush my teeth. I make a cup of coffee. Gradually, I expanded these narratives, adding more detail and complexity. I wake up at 6 a.m. to the sound of my alarm. I reluctantly leave the comfort of my bed and head to the bathroom, where I brush my teeth with minty toothpaste. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee fills the air as I prepare my favorite morning beverage. This exercise helped me think more creatively in English and improved my ability to describe events and express emotions. To make the most of these storytelling exercises, I began keeping a daily journal in English. Writing about my day, my thoughts, and my plans helped solidify my ability to think in English. Whenever I encountered new vocabulary or phrases, I noted them down and made an effort to incorporate them into my journal entries. This practice not only improved my writing skills but also served as a reflective exercise, helping me track my progress and set new language learning goals. Social interaction was also crucial. I joined online forums and social media groups where English was the primary language. Engaging in discussions on topics I was passionate about, such as travel and cooking, made the practice enjoyable and relevant. I even found a language exchange partner. We would meet once a week, spending half the time conversing in English and the other half in their native language. This mutual learning experience was enriching and incredibly effective. I also participated in online discussion groups and book clubs where I could engage with others who were also learning English, sharing tips and encouragement. As I immersed myself more deeply in English, I noticed subtle changes in my thinking patterns. Dreams that used to play out in my native language began to shift to English. Even my internal monologue, the quiet thoughts and musings that filled my day, started to occur more frequently in English. This was a significant milestone, as it showed that my brain was adapting to thinking in a new language. I started to dream in English more often, and my thoughts during the day naturally flowed in English, indicating a deep-seated change in my cognitive processes. The journey was not without its challenges. There were days when I felt frustrated, when the words wouldn't come, and when I doubted my progress. But I reminded myself that language learning is a marathon, not a sprint. Patience and perseverance were key. I celebrated small victories, like successfully ordering food in English without hesitation or understanding a complex conversation on the first try. These moments of success kept me motivated and reminded me of how far I had come. Reflecting on this journey, I realized that learning to think in English had transformed not just my language skills but my confidence and worldview. It opened doors to new opportunities and allowed me to connect with people from diverse backgrounds. The techniques I learned were more than just exercises. They were tools for a lifelong journey of learning and growth. This experience taught me the value of persistence, adaptability, and the joy of continuous learning. Now, thinking in English feels natural, and I look forward to using my skills in new and exciting ways, knowing that this journey has only just begun.